Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI International. Gaza peace plan enters critical phase, talks set to start in Egypt. And mistreatment in Israeli detention. More on the global Summit flotilla coming up on AWANI International. Hamas officials have arrived in Egypt on Monday for crucial talks with Israel under U.S. mediation, aiming to end war in Gaza and secure the release of hostages. U.S. President Donald Trump says negotiations on his 20-point peace plan are advancing rapidly. The discussion is taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh, bringing together Israeli, Hamas, American, and Qatari representatives in what Washington describes as the most detailed push yet toward a ceasefire. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said coming days will be crucial, focusing on the logistics of a hostage-prisoner exchange. Trump said he expects the first phase, the release of 48 hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, to be completed this week. Hamas has agreed to several elements but has avoided discussions on disarmament. U.S. officials say this round aims for a comprehensive deal, avoiding the phased approach that stalled earlier ceasefire attempts. Despite negotiations, Israeli airstrikes continued Sunday. On the streets, many Palestinians say little has changed despite talk of peace.
The push for peace in Gaza is facing its biggest challenge, not from Hamas, but from inside Israel's own government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's support for Trump's peace proposal has sparked backlash from his far-right coalition partners. Ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir have slammed the deal as a national failure and are threatening to quit the government. If they follow through, Netanyahu's coalition could collapse, triggering early elections. But opposition leader Yair Lapid is stepping in, telling the US his party will back Netanyahu to ensure the peace plan moves forward. Lapid says with that support, Netanyahu has no political excuse to delay the deal.
Activists who were on board the global Summit flotilla to Gaza have accused Israel of mistreatment in detention. Several detainees claim Israeli authorities tortured Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg, who was held in a cell infested with bedbugs with little food or water. According to flotilla participants, Greta had been dragged on the ground and paraded with an Israeli flag. Israeli rights groups Adalah, which is providing legal aid, says detainees reported being forced to kneel with their hands zip-tied for hours, denied medication, and blocked from contacting lawyers. Israel's foreign ministry has dismissed the allegations as lies. The global Summit flotilla, made up of more than 40 boats, was on a mission to deliver aid and challenge Israel's maritime blockade of Gaza. Israeli forces intercepted the vessels in international waters last week, arresting every member on board. According to Israeli authorities, a total of 308 activists have been deported so far. Greta Thunberg is among those confirmed to have been deported. This includes 171 people sent to Greece and Slovakia on Monday, and another 137 who arrived in Istanbul on Saturday. Those deported included nationals from across Europe, North America, and Asia, among them citizens of Malaysia, the US, Italy, and Turkey. Malaysia and Pakistan have called on the international community to take concrete action to end the war in Gaza. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, in a joint statement with his Pakistani counterpart Shehbaz Sharif, said both countries support US President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan, although with certain reservations.
We jointly, of course, look favorably at the 20-point peace initiative by President Donald Trump. Although Malaysia do express some concerns, but at least on the point of cessation of hostilities, stop the insane bombings and killings by the Zionist Israeli regime on Gaza in particular. That at least is a clear position taken by Arab countries, Muslim countries, and most of the countries in the world now.
Turning to South Asia, Anwar also highlighted regional tensions between Pakistan and India, stressing the need for and promoting stability. Sharif is on a 3-day official visit to Malaysia aimed at strengthening trade, investment, and defense cooperation between the two countries. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Dah bersedia untuk finali USME 2025 di The Curve Damansara?
24 hingga 26 Oktober, tirai penutup jelajah selepas 4 lokasi di seluruh negara.
Peluang terakhir tahun ini untuk timba ilmu dan perkongsian bersama SME tempatan.
Lebih meriah dengan pelbagai aktiviti interaktif dan persembahan artis hebat.
Jangan lepaskan kemuncak USME 2025.
Menjana impak melalui inovasi digital.
Dibawakan oleh penaja utama jelajah jiwa SME, Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda.
Welcome back. France is facing a fresh political crisis after Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned less than a month after his appointment. The 39-year-old ally of President Emmanuel Macron stepped down hours after announcing his new cabinet. The new cabinet lineup angered both opponents and allies, with some saying it was too far right and others arguing it didn't go far enough. They were set to hold first meeting on Monday afternoon. Lecornu was Macron's 7th prime minister and the 5th in just 2 years, appointed amid public unrest and political gridlock over budgets, spending cuts and tax plans. He had been due to address Parliament on Tuesday to outline his government's roadmap. His sudden resignation sent French stocks and the euro tumbling, raising fresh questions about the stability of Macron's administration. Japan's stock market has surged to a record high after the ruling Liberal Democratic Party chose Sanae Takaichi as its new leader. The pro-business politician is said to be Japan's next prime minister and the country's first female leader in a parliamentary vote later this month.
The benchmark Nikkei 225 jumped nearly 5% on Monday, closing above 47,000 points for the first time ever. The yen, meanwhile, weakened sharply past 150 against the US dollar. Takaichi, a pro-business conservative, has held senior roles including Minister for Economic Security and Internal Affairs. Investors welcomed the announcement of Takaichi's victory in her party's leadership race, with shares rising in real estate, technology and heavy industry companies. Markets expect her administration to boost government spending and maintain pressure on the Bank of Japan to keep interest rates low.
Iran says cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog is no longer relevant after Western powers reinstated international sanctions on Tehran. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the deal can no longer serve as the basis for collaboration, adding that the return of UN sanctions has changed the circumstances.
A deal signed last month with the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, would have allowed for renewed inspections and monitoring. But the agreement lost weight when Britain, France, and Germany, all signatories to the 2015 nuclear accord, triggered the return of UN sanctions, accusing Tehran of violating its commitments, allegations Iran denies. Araghchi also said the European trio will have a much smaller role than in the past in any future nuclear talks. Tehran earlier accused the IAEA of double standards, saying the agency failed to condemn Israeli and U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in June, despite its obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
The Trump administration says it is prepared to initiate mass layoffs of U.S. federal workers if talks with Democrats and Republicans fail to end the government shutdown, now in its fifth day. Lawmakers are set to meet again ahead of another crucial vote on Monday. When asked by reporters on Sunday when the layoffs would begin, U.S. President Donald Trump said simply, it is taking place right now. The shutdown began on October 1st after lawmakers failed to agree on extending government funding past the fiscal year. Healthcare remains the main sticking point, with Democrats seeking to protect subsidies for low-income Americans and reverse Medicaid cuts, while Republicans want broader reforms. If the deadlock continues, around 40% of the federal workforce, about 750,000 people, could be placed on unpaid leave. The standoff threatens government operations through October and could disrupt everything from air travel to visits at national parks. Experts are urging ASEAN nations to deepen trade ties with Canada. They say middle powers must act decisively as U.S.-China rivalry intensifies. Jeff Nankivel, President and CEO of the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada, calls this a crucial moment for non-superpowers to strengthen cooperation.
And this is something where we find we have a substantial set of shared values around the importance of a rules-based international trading order. And so I think in practical terms, where there's the greatest need but happily there's also great potential, is we have, for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, agreement. 4 of the ASEAN members, including Malaysia, are members. Canada is a founding member, and this is probably the highest quality, large-scale trade agreement in recent years that's available. And so we now have the beginning of talks between the CPTPP and the European Union. Mm-hmm. And I think with the UK having left the European Union, but now has become a member of CPTPP, the first one that is truly outside the region. Canada's a Pacific country. That, I think, shows you the importance and the potential for the Europeans, the players in Southeast Asia, and countries like Canada to work together to build an international trading system that can deliver real benefits, regardless of whether other powers, like, for example, the U.S., decide not to participate.
On September 24, Canada signed its first bilateral trade agreement with an ASEAN member, securing a deal with Indonesia. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand confirmed Ottawa's intention to pursue a broader multilateral trade deal with ASEAN to expand market access. Meanwhile, Barrett Bingley, Regional Director at the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada, said ASEAN and Canada should prioritize smaller, targeted initiatives. He argued these minilateral efforts are more practical than ambitious WTO reforms or attempts to revive the long-stalled free trade area of the Asia-Pacific.
This is where I think the ideas around minilaterals and ideas around trade policy around like coalitions of the willing are going to become so important, and ASEAN and Canada are natural partners on this. Rather than trying to fix the entire WTO, or create the idea of the FTAP, which was popular some years ago in APEC, you have to find areas where ASEAN and Canada want to work together, whether that's digital trade or e-commerce or green transition regulations and aspirations. Create working groups, create a path to success, measure that, and make sure that implementation is done. We've certainly been hearing today during the conference that implementation of agreements, usage of agreements can be just as important as getting them signed, right? So first create the structures, but then make sure that you use them and you measure the success.
That wraps up AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the rivalries, strategies, and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.